All dead wrong from start to finish, and Whittier he's to blame. I have no special call to right any Marblehead man, but 'tweren't no fault of Ireson's. My father he told me the tale time and again, and this is the way 'twas."
"For the 100th time," put in Long Jack under his breath.
Ben Ireson he was skipper of the Betty, young feller, comin' home from the Banks. That was before the War of 1812, but justice is justice at all times. They found the active of Portland, and Gibbons of that town he was her skipper. They found her leakin' off Cape Cod Light. There was a terrible gale on, and they was gettin' the Betty home as fast as they could crowd her. Well, Ireson he said there warn't any sense to reskin' a boat in that sea. The men they wouldn't hev it, and he laid it before them to stay by the active till the sea run down a piece. They wouldn't hev that either, hangin' round the Cape in any such weather, leak or no leak. They just up stays and quit, naturally takin' Ireson with them. Folks to Marblehead was mad at him not runnin' the risk, and because next day, when the sea was calm, they never stopped to think o' that. Some o' the active's folk was took off by a Truro man. They come into Marblehead with their own tale to tell, sayin' how Ireson had shamed his town, and so forth and so on, and Ireson's men they was scared, seein' public feelin' agin 'em, and they went back on Ireson, and swore he was responsible for the hull act. 'Tweren't the women neither that tarred and feathered him. Marblehead women don't act that way. 'Twas a passel o' men and boys, and they carted him around town in an old dory till the bottom fell out, and Ireson he told 'em they'd be sorry for it some day. Well, the facts come out later, same as they usually do, too late to be anyways useful to an honest man, and Whittier he come along and picked up the slack end of a lyin' tale, and tarred and feathered Ben Ireson all over onct more after he was dead. 'Twas the only time Whittier ever slipped up, and 'tweren't fair. I whaled Dan good when he brought that piece back from school. Tots don't know no better, o' course, but I'd give you the facts, hereafter and evermore to be remembered. Ben Ireson weren't no such kind of man as Whittier makes him out. My father he knew him well, before and after that business, and you beware o' hasty judgments, young feller. Next."
Harvey had never heard Disko talk so long, and collapsed with burning cheeks. But, as Dan said promptly, a boy could only learn what he was taught at school, and life was too short to keep track of every lie along the coast. Then Manuel touched the jangling, jarring little natchet to a queer tune, and sang something in Portuguese about Nina Innocente, ending with a full-handed sweep that brought the song up with a jerk. Then Disko obliged with his second song, to an old-fashioned creaky tune, and all joined in the chorus. This is one stanza:
"Now April is over and melted the snow, and out o' New Bedford we shortly must tow. Yes, out o' New Bedford we shortly must clear. We're the whalers that never see wheat in the ear."
Here the fiddle went very softly for a while by itself, and then:
"Wheat in the ear, my true love's posy blowin'. Wheat in the ear, we're goin' off to sea. Wheat in the ear, I left you fit for sowin'. When I come back a loaf o' bread you'll be." That made Harvey almost weep, though he could not tell why. But it was much worse when the cook dropped the potatoes and held out his hands for the fiddle. Still leaning against the locker door, he struck into a tune that was like something very bad but sure to happen whatever you did. After a little he sang in an unknown tongue, his big chin down on the fiddle tail, his white eyeballs glaring in the lamplight. Harvey swung out of his bunk to hear better, and amid the straining of the timbers and the wash of the waters, the tune crooned and moaned on, like lee surf in a blind fog, till it ended with a wail.
"Jimmy Christmas! That gives me the blue creevies," said Dan. "What in thunder is it?"
"The song of Fin McCool," said the cook, "when he was goin' to Norway."
His English was not thick, but all clear-cut as though it came from a phonograph.
"Faith, I've been to Norway, but I didn't make that unwholesome noise. 'Tis like some o' the old songs, though.
said Long Jack, sighing. "Don't let's have another without something between," said Dan, and the accordion struck up a rattling, catchy tune that ended: "It's 6 and 20 Sundays since last we saw the land with 1500 quintal, and 1500 quintal, 1,500 toppin quintal, twixt old Queereau and Grand." "Hold on!" roared Tom Platt. "Do you want to nail the trip, Dan? That's Jonah, sure, 'less you sing it after all our salt's wet." "No, 'tain't. Is it, Dad? Not unless you sing the very last verse. You can't learn me anything on Jonahs." "What's that?" said Harvey. "What's a Jonah?" "A Jonah's anything that spoils the luck. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a boy, or a bucket. I've known a splittin' knife Jonah 2 trips till we was on to her," said Tom Platt. "There's all sorts of Jonahs. Jim Bourke was one till he was drowned on George's. I'd never ship with Jim Bourke, not if I was starvin'. There was a green dory on the Ezra flood. That was a Jonah too, the worst sort of Jonah. Drowned 4 men, she did, and used to shine fiery of nights in the nest." "And you believe that?" said Harvey, remembering what Tom Platt had said about candles and models. "Haven't we all got to take what's served?" A mutter of dissent ran around the bunks. "Outboard, yes. Inboard, things can happen," said Disko. "Don't you go making a mock of Jonahs, young feller." "Well, Harve ain't no Jonah. Day after we catched him," Dan cut in, "we had a toppin' good catch." The cook threw up his head and laughed suddenly, a queer, thin laugh. He was a most disconcerting nigger. "Murder!" said Long Jack. "Don't do that again, doctor. We ain't used to it." "What's wrong?" said Dan. "Ain't he our mascot, and didn't they strike on good after we'd struck him?" "Oh, yes," said the cook. "I know that, but the catch is not finished yet." "He ain't goin' to do us any harm," said Dan hotly. "Where are you hittin' and edgin' to? He's all right." "No harm, no. But one day he will be your master, Danny." "That all?" said Dan placidly. "He won't, not by a jugful." "Master," said the cook, pointing to Harvey. "Man," and he pointed to Dan. "That's news. How soon?" said Dan, with a laugh. "In some years, and I shall see it. Master and man, man and master." "How in thunder did you work that out?" said Tom Platt. "In my head, where I can see." "How?" This from all the others at once. "I do not know, but so it will be." He dropped his head and went on peeling the potatoes, and not another word could they get out of him. "Well," said Dan, "a heap o' things'll have to come about 'fore Harve's any master o' mine, but I'm glad the doctor ain't choosin' to mark him for a Jonah. Now I mistrust Uncle Salters for the Jonahest Jonah in the fleet regardin' his own special luck. Dunno if it's spreadin' same as smallpox. He ought to be on the Carrie Pitman. That boat's her own Jonah, sure. Crews an' gear make no differ to her driftin'. Jimmy Christmas! She'll etch loose in a flat calm."
"Well, we'll clear of the fleet, anyway," said Disko. "Carrie Pitman and all."
There was a rapping on the deck.
"Uncle Salters has catched his luck,"
said Dan as his father departed.
"It's blown clear,"
Disko cried, and all the foc'sle tumbled up for a bit of fresh air. The fog had gone, but a sullen sea ran in great rollers behind it. The We're Here slid, as it were, into long sunk avenues and ditches which felt quite sheltered and homelike if they would only stay still; but they changed without rest or mercy, and flung up the schooner to crown one peak of 1,000 gray hills, while the wind hooted through her rigging as she zigzagged down the slopes. Far away a sea would burst in a sheet of foam, and the others would follow suit as at a signal, till Harvey's eyes swam with a vision of interlacing whites and grays. 4 or 5 Mother Carey's chickens stormed round in circles, shrieking as they swept past the bows. A rain squall or two strayed aimlessly over the hopeless waste, ran down wind and back again, and melted away.